Okay, this October 18th, 2017 meeting of the Oyster River Cooperative School Board will come to order. Our first action is the approval of the agenda. And I would like to suggest, if it's agreeable to the board, since Siemens is here for a presentation, that they be moved up right after the report on the busing routes. Then we can go on to the business that just involves us after that. Is that agreeable? Sure. And then, Michael, you have that report that. So where would you want to do that in the comment section, or would you rather do that have as a discussion item?
I think a discussion item is fine.
Okay, so Michael has the statement about contacting the board, which I think we should have all, it's in our packet, and so we'll add that as a discussion item. Is that agreeable? Okay, with those changes, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Moved by Denise, is there a second? Second by Dan. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 6 in favor, the student rep in favor. The agenda is approved. We've now moved to public comment. Just a sense of the guidelines. Each speaker has 3 minutes, and you're advised not to name any student other than your own child. You're, of course, allowed to do that, but if you have a reference to other student, please do not do that by name. Okay? Please just identify yourself and...
My name is Benjamin Cottle. I represent my son Joseph Cottle and my daughter Kaylee Brown. I'm here tonight. Our children were unfortunately involved in the racial incidences that happened at the beginning of the school year, and I'm here tonight to let the school board know about that whole incident and how it affected our family. I think it's very important for you guys to understand how the system as it's set up now has failed us, and there need to be some corrections made. And as a part of that, we came up with a 13-point action plan, and I've got copies here for each and every one of you. My wife and I, we are willing to help out in any way, in any capacity. We're not reinventing the wheel when we do an anti-racism policy. It's already been done and done successfully at other institutions. We do not want what has happened to our children to happen to any other children in the district. And that is our goal. And that is my motivation for being here tonight. You guys need to know what went on. And, I'm here to offer my help and my support if in any way and capacity that you see fit. With that, I'd like to pass this out. And I don't think our contact information is on there, so I'm going to pass out my card too. If you don't mind, take one. I did 8 copies because there was 8 school board members.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, that's pretty much about it.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. Krista Butts, and I still live in Lee, New Hampshire. So I am here to talk about something different, football. And I wanted to let you guys know that Portsmouth has decided to, Portsmouth is interested, my husband and I are friends with the head coach of the Portsmouth High School football team. And they have been moved up to Division I. There's no chance for them to be moved down to Division II because all of their sports got moved up to Division I. The restructuring of the sports allowed Portsmouth to be moved up to Division I, and they are looking for a cooperative agreement with Oyster River again for football, and they have taken into consideration all of the things that you were concerned about with the original cooperative agreement and rewritten the entire cooperative agreement. The first item that you were concerned about was practice, and back then, we did not know what was going to be with our school start time. We now know that Portsmouth and Oyster River have both moved towards the later start time. Even with that said, Portsmouth has decided for next year to move their practices from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., hoping that Oyster River will enter into the cooperative agreement with them. That gives the kids ample time to finish their homework and travel safely to Portsmouth for practices. They will be practicing under the lights on their turf field. They also took into consideration your concern about the length of the cooperative agreement. If you recall, last time it was 2-year agreement with an opt-out clause in case they could be moved down to a Division II school. This cooperative agreement will not have a clause. It will not have an opt-out clause. It will also not have a term. With the NHIAA, the cooperative agreement has to be renewed every 2 years, but it can go on forever and ever and ever, as is with Epping Newmarket, which is another local cooperative agreement for football. And just like the hockey agreement that we have with Portsmouth for the girls. The cost per player, they also have changed that as well, and it will actually be calculated through to the entire team. So they'll take into consideration how many players they have from Portsmouth, how many players they have from Oyster River. They'll take the total cost of what it costs them, divide it evenly, and that cost will be paid for by the parents. There is no cost to the district. And they also wanted to add a clause to the cooperative agreement, which I think it was only mentioned once or twice, that there was concern that the Oyster River kids would be treated differently because they were Oyster River and not Portsmouth. But they actually have added wording to the clause, or I think they have, I haven't seen the clause, or the contract, that there will be equal opportunity playing for freshmen and JV. All kids will be given equal opportunity play, and all kids will play. For varsity, obviously, it's based on skill, but there will be no consideration as to whether the student comes from Oyster River or from Portsmouth, and they will be treated equally. This is important to us because and I mentioned this before, but I want to reiterate it because I know some of you were not here on the school board when that cooperative agreement came in front of you. But it is extremely important to Oyster River Youth Football Program that our kids continue on in a program that has the same coaching philosophy that we do. Our program is very different, which is why it's so popular. We have kids from Stratford, we have kids from Barrington, Nottingham, and the Oyster River community all on our football team. And the reason why we attract kids from other communities is because our program is different, and it is very safety oriented. And we teach skills all the way down in 3rd and 4th grade, so that by the time they get to 7th and 8th grade and the kids are bigger, those skills are innate, and those kids are safe.
Great.
And our safety record shows that. So what I'm asking for you to do is to charge the athletic director of Oyster River Cooperative School District to communicate with the athletic director at Portsmouth and to present that cooperative agreement to you, the school board, and I would like to see an agenda item on the board,
I think this has been way over 3 minutes,
Thank
and it's
you.
really not right if other people are allowed.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Hi, I'm Nathan Schwadron. I live here in Durham. I'm the father of Jane Schwadron. The first comment that was made with regard to racism in Oyster River, we've observed with our daughter Jane that this is a fairly widespread problem. Many of the incidents that we've heard about involve the use of language that really should not be used. But the bottom line is that this district, in our observation, has a very serious problem that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be understood.
Thank you. Other public comment? No? Thank you. Thank you all. Need a motion to approve the October 4th, 2017 regular meeting minutes. Denise?
I make a motion to approve the October 4th regular meeting minutes.
Moved by Denise. Is there a second? Second by Al. Are there corrections? Denise?
Just a small one on page 3. Under my comment, when I talked about Denise Day attended the high school PTO meeting, encouraged people to get involved. I would like to add, it is a great way to find out what is happening in the school, because I did mention that as well at the meeting.
Are there other?
I'm not sure of it, but I believe when we were talking about the burden of homework on the Oyster River students, and we began to have a little bit of a discussion, Hannah, I think you also offered some really pertinent thoughts about that, and we even talked at the level how important it is for us to make sure we're connecting with the students, and we really hear the students' voice. And I think, Hannah, I don't know, I think you mentioned surveys. You didn't even have time for surveys, and how you thought to have kind of more face-to-face communication and really giving students a chance to express themselves openly in that kind of manner was important. So I think that was a very key point you made, Hannah, and should be reflected in the minutes.
Where was
how,
that?
what language, I mean?
And what page are you on? Because I'm having a hard time finding where you are.
I think it followed when I made the comment that people had spoken to us at the last board meeting, both about start time and homework, and I was asking to make sure that the board was really looking through administration at this homework issue. And I think, Hannah, I think there was a response maybe from you, Mr. Morse, Dr. Morse, that there was a survey, and I think Hannah piped in at that point that we don't even have time to do a survey. And we talked about the sociology class, which is the one-off, and Hannah, you mentioned having that kind of opportunity to talk and express was vital.
I think that's in here, actually.
It would be under Kenny, it's under Kenny's comments under board.
Right.
So on the same page 3,
Yeah.
because it says Kenny would like to have a homework update.
But I think the key is Hannah's input,
Right.
that we really need to connect with the students, and the survey might not be an appropriate way to be connecting with the students. And I could work on wording and send that, and we could approve it at the next meeting if you want, but
It was more like where it goes. I think what we're trying to figure out is where it goes in the
I think it went
minutes.
in that section. I think that's...
What if, yeah, what if you just had, she encourages a dialogue with the students and the board to see how their needs can be met, and not simply rely on a survey? Would that be?
Yeah, that sounds.
And I would put, and in specific, relating to the homework issue, because I think that was the focus that we took off, was that original homework issue.
Well, I wonder if she encourages a dialogue with students about homework, let's see, she encourages a dialogue with the students and the board about homework, and not have the board simply rely on a survey, something like that.
Yeah, I think
Would that be fair?
Yes, that's.
Do you have that? Rather than having to put it back another time.
Perfect. That's fine.
I wondered, like, we don't identify one of the speakers by a second name. I wonder, so when you said Barbara of Lee, does anybody have her last name? It seems odd just to have.
I didn't get it, and people weren't writing it down. In fact, tonight, somebody spoke. He didn't spoke, and I didn't get his last name.
My last name is Schwager.
Can you spell it for me?
Yeah, it's SCHWA, D like David, the bar.
Okay. Well, maybe if somebody can locate, come up with her last name, because it seems odd just to.
We can go ahead from the video.
Okay, great. With those changes, any other changes? No? All in favor of approving the minutes as changed, please raise your hands. 6 in favor, student rep in favor, the minutes are approved. Announcements and commendations and comments from the district? No? Announcements, commendations, and comments from the board? Denise?
In your packets, there's a little memo from me that has to do with enrollment. It's just something that I did for myself. It looks like this. It's actually something that I did for myself to help to explain why we're having the issues in terms of our elementary school capacity. So I kind of did it out so I would have a visual, and so it's just something to kind of refer to. I know we're going to be having discussion later on about the elementary schools and sort of what to do with the enrollment issue as it is presenting itself. But I just kind of went through everything and just kind of said, oh, and this is what's going on. So that's what this is about. And then the other thing is the Chengdu University came, and there was a concert that was put on with the high school, and it was amazing. It was just amazing. I just continue to just be blown away by the talent in our schools, and musically, and other ways as well, but in this case, particularly musically. But it's CHENGDU, right? Chengdu University. Students from the university came. They performed as well as the Oyster River High School. Not the, what's the band? It's not the concert band. The
Orchestra?
not the orchestra either. The studio orchestra. Yeah, the studio orchestra. Yep.
Al?
So October 28th, Saturday, is in downtown Durham, is Trick or Treat on Main with the movie on Main. Trick or treating is from 2 to 4. The movie is from 4:30 to 6, and I can't remember what the movie is. I've forgotten. But the starting point is at Mill Plaza next to Bella's. There's about 25 businesses right now that will be handing out candy, so it's a good trick-or-treating route. I think we have probably 50 or 60 UNH students helping us with it, so they'll be manning the businesses. It's the first time this has been done. I think it's going to be a great event, so if you're looking for a place to get candy, it's kind of fun, please come. The other thing is shameless plug. If you want to know more about stuff that's occurring in Durham, community events, things like that, there's a Facebook page called Celebrate Durham, New Hampshire, and you can find out what we're up to.
Great. Thanks, Al. Kenny?
A few things, and I don't know where to fit it in, and maybe Al will also jump in. But in our involvement with Durham Town Council, and involved in the same kind of budget process that we are, and I think it's very germane to the discussion that we had about budget setting goals, and particularly, Michael, to your comments as well. And we had a presentation from Durham's person who is charged kind of with economic development and looking at budget and looking at how expenses continue to rise, capital improvement project spending continues to arise. For Durham to stay stable, meaning having a tax assessment on residency per property value to be stable, we're looking at over a very short period of time that Durham really needs to increase the assessed value, and I think the number was 300 million of assessed value, which is daunting considering that Durham has made tremendous strides to try to increase our assessed value already, witness all of the student housing downtown. And Durham is really aggressively trying to look at that, but I think it appropriate with the discussion that we had in that some of us represent Lee and some of us represent Madbury as well. When Durham takes on those projects that increase assessment, they do have a very direct benefit based on the formula that we use to fund the schools to Lee and Madbury representatives. And I think that Lee and Madbury are probably in the same position that we are in. And I think it's important to go back to your local elected officials, your town councils, your selectmen, and talk about ways that maybe you can participate in increasing that assessment, because otherwise I think we as a school board are doomed, because our ability to raise revenue comes from Barrington students and school lunches and not much more. And if the towns are all participating, we stand a better chance. So I just want to lay that out because I think that's crucial. again, would love to see the homework thing on a future agenda, and then I think we should have on a future agenda that Krista Butts raised about whether we want to proceed to charge our AD and seeing about working in agreement with Portsmouth. So those are two future items I would request on agendas.
Can I just butt in? I threw everybody on the board except for Kenny and myself, because we already had it. This, I dropped one of these at your place. This is the PowerPoint of the presentation by the economic development person.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one, I got one.
Other comments from the board? No? District reports?
Thank you. Tonight I'm actually going to spend my time focusing on giving you an update on our bus system. Lisa has very kindly come here tonight to assist in this endeavor. The first thing I really want to just say is I just want to commend Lisa for the immense amount of work that she has put into the planning of these routes. I just want to remind everyone that this goes back over a year of effort once the board determined that this is the direction I wanted to go in to really work this issue. And I think it's really important as we talk about kind of where we are at right now with our bus routes to just keep in mind that bus routes are not static things. It's not like you figured out and there, you're done. The variables that are constantly coming into play in this make it very challenging. For example, over the summer, we ask all families when they're registering to indicate whether or not they're planning to take advantage of transportation. Based upon those answers and the addresses that those people respond to, the initial routes are planned. Well, one of the things, as it's completely understandable, but people change their minds and people move, and the patterns and ridership patterns are constantly shifting. So one of the things that's really important to understand as we talk about this is that this, separate from the start time change and the shift to the K-12 afternoon bus run, is this constant issue of adjustment. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that as long as Lisa has been in the role as transportation director, she's constantly reviewing bus routes, looking at bus stops, making adjustments, with the goal of finding that perfect situation. And by perfect, we would say that would mean to us that we've met all board policies and kids are safely getting home every day. So I just want to put that out there. In your blue folder, you should have two spreadsheets that Lisa and I have been working on for a while here. They didn't get into your folder until today, but we wanted to give you as up-to-date information as we possibly could give you. The first one, which is entitled My Sheet, I don't know why it's entitled My Sheet, but that's what is entitled, is a summary of all of our PM bus routes. And I want to kind of explain to you kind of where we're at with those. You'll notice that there are, in the far left-hand side, we've got 5 to 12 bus routes, we've got K4 bus routes, and then we got K12 bus routes. And you can see bus 8, 27, 30, and 35 are 5 to 12 bus routes, meaning they go between middle and high school only. And then you have 26, 31, 29, 28, 21, 24, and 73 are K4 routes, meaning that they are exclusively assigned to Moherman and Mast Way. And then the remaining bus routes are going to the entire district. They're either starting at the middle school, high school, and going to Moherman, or vice versa. What we've attempted to provide to you there in the first column is the head count. In other words, the number of people who are assigned to that bus. One of the things that, as we talk about this, keep in mind that the head count is not, at no point are that many kids on the bus. The afternoon PM bus runs are running like more like a public transit system. They're constantly taking on and dropping off. So the number, for example, in bus number 8, where there are 70 kids, they're dropping off very quickly, and so there are never that many kids on the bus. You'll see the departure times for all the buses. I mean, obviously, the school, we have a uniform end time to school, so that means that by 3:15 every day, all of the buses are starting from wherever they're assigned to begin from. So that's that column. And then it gives you an account, tells you what the second school is they stop at, how many they pick up at that point, and what time they depart from that second location. Okay? Now, if you continue to work down the line, there's a column that says delivered between two schools. That means the kids that are being dropped off on the way between the schools. So that's how many kids are being dropped off. The next column is the time of the last stop that is a high school, middle school kid. And then we've attempted to give you the maximum, the longest ride on that bus for a kid that is a high school, middle school child. The next column, we've given you the last stop for elementary, and then the final, the extreme right is the longest ride for an elementary school kid on that bus. Now, there are two bus routes that are clearly boxed out there that are not where we want them to be. Bus 1 and bus 22. I would point out, by the way, that a group of district leadership met with a group of parents from this area trying to remember, it was late last week, and we had a really wonderful dialogue around the issues that we're facing and the concerns they had, and I think we're all very much on the same page in terms of where we want to go. Clearly, you've heard repeatedly, and I don't need to go into it again, there is a bus driver shortage, and our intent would be when we reach a point where we have enough drivers to be able to put one more bus on the road, that one more bus would be targeting those two routes. Okay, and we anticipate that those routes would be reduced by 10 to 15 minutes each. Okay? Questions on that, what that data tells you? I think just a general idea here is, with the exception of those two buses, we're really right on line with what you set for us for goals in terms of 40-minute maximum bus ride time for elementary school kids and 45 for high school, middle school. Any questions?
When do you anticipate, I mean, can you anticipate when those two buses would, or what it would take to get those two buses on within policy?
In terms of
I mean,
when
you have
will we get
drivers
another
coming
driver?
on, you know, is there a plan, or kind of a process to get there, or is this going to be?
Well, there are two things that are happening with regards to that. One is, in fact, we were just talking today, you've got another driver who's in the process of going through paperwork. One of the things that's happening is it's kind of one of those deals where it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So
That's okay.
we've hired drivers, but then we have drivers that are going out for various personal and medical issues. So we're not, when we're fully staffed, at some point in the future. Certainly, Lisa would be a better person to answer how many additional drivers do we need before we will be at a point where we can do that. Do you want to jump in, attempt?
Yeah, we currently have 26.
Could you be talking to the mic, please, Lisa?
We currently have 26 bus drivers, with one just coming on a couple days ago. We need 30. In order to fulfill the need. So because of that 4-driver shortage, Nancy and I are still driving most afternoons to cover everything, and we still have the 2 routes here that Todd just talked about. We also have a few special needs runs that need some addressing immediately, and we can't do that unless we have more drivers. We are actively advertising. We are actively taking applications and interviews and training people, so it takes time.
So if someone just so happens was perusing deeply on their cable channel and came across this, they could talk to you about a job as a bus driver, right?
Yes, absolutely, we train.
Okay.
Just a quick question. This my sheet talks about the afternoon run, which is complicated because of the merging of elementaries, middle, high school. Currently, with the morning runs, which aren't listed here, what is the longest middle school, high school?
I have 40 minutes.
40?
Yes. Some of them are 30 minutes, but 40 minutes, and we have not added a bus on because they're still 2 separate bus runs.
So theoretically, we have a kid may be doing a 40 plus a 50 or a 55 with, so an hour and a half or more
Conceivably.
on a bus in a day, right?
Conceivably, yes.
I think what's misunderstood is the pickup time and the time we're delivering at the school and school start time. There's 3 different times there. So pickup times might start at 7:15. We're delivering at 7:55, 7:50 at the high school and the middle school at the same time so that we can get out and get our elementary routes done. So the ridership time is 40 minutes. They're arriving at school 5 minutes to 8. You know, some of them 5 minutes after 8, depending on where they're coming from.
And just in the context, I appreciate how difficult this issue is, and I know you're doing maximum to try to solve it. Curious about, and the concept, kids get on the bus, kids get off the bus, so you have numbers. But as far as percent occupancy, which means you've got to program your bus as if every kid's going to ride the bus. What do you find, though, is maybe an accurate generalization of what the percent occupancy is?
When I do my presentation, I'll be able to show you better our total student count versus those that are eligible versus those that choose to walk or drive their student in versus those who are riding the bus. So I do have that in the presentation.
Well, let me just make a couple of quick comments, and then we'll turn it over to Lisa. Actually, the second spreadsheet you have, actually, it came from some request for information Michael had given to us, and we felt that it was worth giving it to everybody. I mean, really what it's trying to do is provide the pickup and drop-off times from 16, 17 last year and what we're at now. If you look at the 2 rides on that sheet, Riverside Farm and High Road, you'll see there's in the ideal state, there's like an asterisk next to 345. Those would be the 2 routes that would be impacted by an additional driver if we get them on the road. And it's a challenge to say exactly what the difference will be until we plan the route and say, here it is. But you definitely can get a sense of, you know, in the morning, what time in the past kids were being picked up on each of these routes and what time they are now being picked up. So, Lisa, you want to?
Yeah, I do acknowledge that that was my specific request, and I really appreciate that. And I know this was a lot of extra data, but I think once we have a chance to digest it all, this is going to help us understand the situation objectively.
Absolutely. And actually, it was very enlightening to us, too, as we were talking through. So thank you for making the request.
I did make one change on that. You had put down Meserve as one of the stops you wanted data for. Well, I don't have K-12 on Meserve, so I chose the next road down, which is Fog, and I put that in there to give you the comparison.
Yeah, that's perfect. I literally just pulled up the map and kind of tried to pick a selection of places across the district.
Okay.
So, thank you.
So now Lisa's going to talk more about how our routes are formed, and she can answer some of the questions that have just come up. So, go ahead.
Thank you. So when, I guess there's a little bit of a misunderstanding on how this program, Transponder, creates bus routes. We upload our student database into the system, and then we have to tell the computer what we want to do with it. So before I get into those details, I have outlined here on this first screen, there's a triangular shape. Let me get this on. Okay. If you see right here, this is kind of like a triangle. That's our entire district. This line separates and makes this section Madbury. This line comes down, and this section is Lee, and then this remaining section is the Durham area. So within that area, we have K through 12 students. We have, or not within that area, I guess within our school district, we have 2,152 students in my database that attend our school district. Those that are eligible, I polled, removed any students that live outside of district from that. There are 2,023 students that are eligible for transportation within the district. Then we asked parents, guardians, when they were registering their students in the I forget what that's called, for
Registration.
the online registration, that there's a mandatory question in there, how is your child going to get to school? How is your child going to get home? And parent, walk, bus, those are all options. They have to choose an answer. So what I did was I took the data that those who all lived in the walk zone, wanted to be in the walk zone. I removed those students and I brought it to 1,831. And then the ones who actually signed up to use transportation, I ended up with 1,462 students, which is a little over 70% of our eligible kids for transportation. So these are the ones that said, yes, we do want to use transportation. So I have to go by that number when designing bus routes. And go ahead.
There's just different statistics on one of our, in our packet. We have one that has K-12 students eligible signed up, and the numbers are not the same.
They're not. I updated it just before I came. I apologize.
Okay, so the ones you just told, those are the
This PowerPoint is the most recent.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so if I move on to this next slide, 1,462 students for AM and/or PM transportation, because some of them said they would bring their students in, but they needed a ride home, so that came up to 72%. So when I tell the computer, take these addresses and geocode them to the map, this display that you see now is what I get. All these little blue dots are students that are geocoded to an actual address that is on that map. And then I go from there to, there's no button to push to say, make bus routes out of this. The computer doesn't know how to do that. I have to go in and manually make the bus routes. So this next slide right here, and some of these slides you may not see, I apologize. This next slide here is a bus route, one of our AM bus routes that I pulled up because it shows from the furthest point in the district over to the Epping-Lee line. The bus route starts there and it works its way into the high school and the middle school, which are these two pink buildings here. So that bus route starts at 7:20. It's arriving and delivering at 7:57. It has 56 students assigned to it. Now, those that signed up for it, there's a number of them we have not seen, so it's not an actual head count. And then there are students on there that called and said, well, we can't get a parking pass, so we need to put them back on transportation, which is fine. Anytime they can change their mind. So our number of students that we started off with has already changed because reality. So that total ride time from first pickup to delivery at both high school and middle school is 37 minutes for that bus route, and the red line is the path of the bus. And if you see this little funny looking, not even really a shape, I don't know what you'd call it, and there's a plus sign, that's where I've gone in, created the bus stop, drew the circle around the parcels of the students that reside in there so that it would pull all those students into that bus stop. And then I moved on to the next area where I could safely place another bus stop or at the end of somebody's driveway, depending what next came up. Does anybody have any questions yet?
And maybe it's premature, but so in my trying to understand this better, is that you've got 56 riders signed up for that particular bus route. And so the two questions I would want to know is, how many potential riders could you have had if 100% of the kids in that catchment area signed up? And then I would also want to know how many kids are actually riding the bus, and to break it down between morning and afternoon. Because I think part of, it's been what I keep saying, I want to know about the efficiency.
I can get the data easily enough for the total students who reside within that, whether they want transportation or not. I can't get it right now. It'll take a little bit of work, but I'll get that data for you.
Great, thank you.
But the 56 is the total number assigned to that bus based
Because
on...
that's based on who said they were going to use transportation.
Exactly.
Yes, so the actual riders, unless we took attendance every morning, and we just don't have the time to do that, once we get to know our kids, we could probably think back on the route and say, yeah, okay, I had this one, and this one didn't ride today. We could get an accurate ridership, but without some sort of they do make scanning systems that work with the student badges that they can scan as they get on the bus, and it'll take us.
So what about just
That's expensive.
give the bus drivers a clicker? And every kid that comes on the bus, all they have to do is click.
Right.
And
Well, they have
we don't
those.
care who the kid is, but what we want to know is how many kids are getting on the bus. So just that little clicker will tell you how many kids are actually on the bus.
Okay.
And you periodically do that, don't you,
Yeah,
Lisa?
for AM and PM, like 4 or 5 times a year. Because I try to, with athletics winding down right now, but Christmas is around the corner, so the late runs will kick into higher gear because of concerts and what have you, and it's really hard to get an accurate, and some of the drivers will tell you that they have, like, say, 70 students assigned to their high school, middle school. They only see about 50 on an average, but it's not the same student. They're all different students, so they're all still actually riding the bus, just not at the same time. So, and it's really kind of hard to pinpoint that.
I don't envy what you do, and I appreciate it
Thank you.
greatly.
Thank you. Okay, so are there any more questions on this slide? All right. And I put this in here because this is a tool that is in, and it's really kind of small for me to see. It's the same bus route in the morning. This tool, what it does is, sorry, I'm going to turn it this way so you can see. It takes all the bus stops that I've created, and it has the students, I'm not a right-handed mouser, it has the students that are assigned to that bus stop in this column here. So if I click on this, and I'm not going to because there's students' names in there, it tells me there's 1 student assigned to this bus stop, there's 6 students assigned to that bus stop. What the computer does is it takes the start bus time, it takes creates a total stop time. It's got programmed in there 15 seconds per student to get on the bus. It takes the number of students, multiplies it by the 15, creates a bus stop time. That's not always accurate because they don't, get on the bus 15 seconds apart. They get on the bus together. So I have to actually go in there and tweak those times to get a more realistic bus route timing. So the computer can generate this, but it sometimes isn't realistic. It also doesn't generate heavy traffic areas. It doesn't generate, a stop sign on Route 125 that could take 8 minutes to pull out of.
Right.
So it's not going, and I have to say, okay, this is a daily thing. We sit at 125 for at least 5 minutes. I tack in that 5 minutes on this bus route. So you really need to know the traffic patterns and all that. We're a little thrown off with some traffic patterns we weren't anticipating for the PM routes for this year, but we're working on it. Is there any questions on that slide there? So that's just one of the tools to help me to get more accurate routes into the computer so you can see what we're doing, and it will create reports. Okay.
I assume that when you go in and manually adjust things, you're always adding time. You're not ever reducing the computer's.
Some of them, yes, we're reducing because I might have a stop with 15 students and it's still going to take, it's going to take those 15 students and multiply it by 15 seconds. It doesn't take a full minute to get 4 kids on the bus. You'll get them all on there in 30 seconds. So yeah, I have to go in and make those adjustments. So this next slide is showing you 4 PM routes, and I chose Lee because it seems to be the most difficult area in the district to get these K through 12 done, but it works. There's 2 routes within this that need working on. It's the red route and the pink route. Getting another driver that can drive another bus route will take care of that. But these 4 bus routes are high school, middle school first. I'm sorry, there's 3 there? 3 there. These 3 bus routes are K through 12 PM bus routes. They are starting at the high school, middle school. By the time they get loaded up, it's about 3:12, 3:15. They get on the road. They head towards the Mastway School. They're all heading to the Mastway School. There's all 4 of them have stops along Mast Road that are strategically planned so that the buses are all stopping and dropping at the same time. They're not waiting behind one another. They're not holding up all kinds of, well, they're holding up traffic, but not, you know, it's not the same bus going down Mast Road making all these stops. And then they're arriving at Mastway School, departing there anywhere between 3:25 and 3:32, depending on what's going on at that level. We're constantly working on the dismissals at the elementary schools and the high school, middle school too, to see if there's, you know, ways to improve it. And within those 3 bus routes, there are 278 students assigned. I didn't think to get I think the total minutes on one of them was 55 minutes, right, Todd?
Yeah, one is 55 minutes.
And that's one of the ones that we need to address with help. So that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a point. So between the high school and Mastway, it looks pretty efficient. I mean, you're having buses get there in maybe 10 minutes and a little bit more. So you are dealing with the Amazon problem of you can get something from Seattle or wherever really close, but it's your final delivery that is bunging up the system. And I think that demonstrates that
And out of
perfectly.
20
The time is, that's where the time is
out of
really
22
spent.
bus routes, there are 2 that are not meeting the criteria. So that's not too bad. I'd like them to be a little bit, Any more questions on that slide?
So just my sense, if you have like 1,400 kids taking the afternoon bus, probably, or 1,200, whatever, it's just about a quarter of them are taking on a K-12 run. Is that all right? Because you say 278.
This is just 3 bus routes.
Okay.
So that's just 3 bus routes that are K-12 and they're heading to Lee and,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Not
the,
all of them are going
in
there.
terms of the buses that are running long, those are the bus routes that we're...
Yeah,
we're
2 of
talking
those.
I got it.
There are ones that go through Maharriman as well.
Yep,
Okay.
and they're too full with students to be able to shift roads, and if I shifted, it makes me crazy. If I shifted a road, it's going to make this one later, so it's working on this end, but it's shifting that problem to the next route, so there's better solutions than that.
Can I ask you one question, Lisa? So like, away from what is an amazingly complex problem, if you get the 3 drivers, we have the buses, right?
We have a couple of small buses, we have a couple of full-size buses.
So in other words, it's not a vehicle problem to drive.
That's correct.
We have the buses.
Can I just ask, this may be a little bit tangential, but in terms of recruitment, this is a question I asked Dr. Morse. Initially, we had this probationary rate that was fairly low, which I think $12 or something, which I think is no longer the case. Is that right? Correct. But we still do not pay bus drivers for training. Is that
Correct.
Correct?
That's correct.
I'm just wondering, in terms of making the job as attractive as we could make it in this short term, whether it might make sense just to have a cost figure to say, you know, what would happen if we paid bus drivers for training? Because I think that's probably going to be in the cards down the road. Whether that money, you know, we could find that money to, because it seems to me to make it as attractive as we can to attract bus drivers. And if that's, you know, if you have to go, I don't know, how long is the training?
It depends on the person. It depends on how they're taking. There are certain how they're taking everything in. I'm not finishing my sentences. There are paperwork that has to be dealt with prior to even starting to train them. We have to send their credentials to Pupil Transportation.
Yeah.
We have to wait to get the background check from them, the okay to train, or I've never had them say not to, but I'm sure there's people out there that are not okay to train them. When they're ready to go take their written test, they go down and take their written test. At that point, DMV gives them an appointment. This last one, the furthest appointment, the closest appointment for Durham was over a month. So he chose, I told him, go ahead and take the Nashua appointment because that put him in there in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So then I had to cover those two drivers so they could take them out to take that up, yeah. So it depends on what we're given for appointments.
Okay. Any ballpark average, or, I mean,
Couple months.
a couple months? Okay.
Just a follow-up on that one. Last meeting, I believe we discussed the processing delays at the state level. Has there been any movement on that or any lobbying effort to?
Yeah, Lisa gave me the contact, and I've called the state. The trooper that's in charge, I have not gotten a call back. Might be because he's that busy.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
He actually doesn't do those, the testing. He's out running audits on, I've had a couple of phone conversations with him lately just for other reasons, but he's out doing audits. So there's a crew of civilians that do the DOT testing, but while they were up there, they had an 11 o'clock appointment on the 16th to go to Nashua. They didn't get seen until 1. They had firefighters there with getting their CDL for their trucks, tractor trailers. So it isn't just school buses, it's any kind of licensing that would be heavy commercial. And they only have so much manpower to do that. They rotate. I think they go just on Thursdays, and they rotate around the state. There's different points where they go. UNH is one of them. West Edge parking lot, I think they use, but we often go straight to Concord or this past Monday, Nashua, to get in there sooner.
Okay, great.
Okay, so this one here was just another slideshow showing 6 K-12 bus routes between Moheramet and the high school, middle school. 2 of them start at Moheramet, and then they go to the high school and the middle school. One of them would be the yellow route here. It ends way out on Dame Road, Bay Road. So this is just showing they look good, but like if you look at the Madbury area, I'm pointing to my screen here. If you look at this Madbury area, there really is only 3 roads in the Madbury area to create bus routes on. There's no intersecting roads to, so there's really the red route, pink, and the blue one are the 3 Madbury up in that top corner. And then Route 4, Durham Point Road, Dame Road, Bay Road, and then this purple color here is kind of more around the schools.
And all of those runs are within board policy.
Yes. Yes, all of those are. And assigned to those routes are 412 students, K through 12. So on the 6 buses, we're transporting assigned 412 students. But keep in mind, they're not, if you took that 412 and divided it by 6, you're probably going to get close. I haven't even done the math on that. It could be over 77, I don't know. But they're dropping students before they're getting to the elementary school. So they're delivering students, and then they're picking up elementary students. So they're not all on that bus at the same time. Oh, I guess that's it. I threw that in there in case anybody wanted to see the elementary boundaries. So it really has nothing to do with this presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I think that was really informative, Lisa, because, quite frankly, nobody really knows how these runs are put together, and the fact that you use both the computer program to plot kids and then you have to customize these routes. I think that's the piece that was really interesting tonight in terms of your presentation, that how customized you take each route and try to create the maximum efficiency. So thank you.
That's why I really welcome feedback from the community, because there are eyes and ears out there too, so.
And Lisa, did you say that you're actually driving too?
I am nearly every afternoon, some mornings.
And I just wanted to say how lucky we are to have you.
Oh, thank
That
you.
you're not defining your role as being whatever and
There's a lot of
address
hats.
this vexing
Yeah, there's a lot of
issue,
hats.
and nothing is beyond what you're doing, and I think I really appreciate it. And we're
I appreciate you saying that, thank you. All right.
Questions? Nice job, Lisa. Thank you so much. Okay, Siemens report? Thank you folks for waiting. Sorry to keep you waiting, but...
Thanks. Just go? Okay. I don't know if we're waiting for someone or? We're good? Okay. Tom Seekins from Siemens, this is Sean Foy, a colleague on the performance contracting team, and Mike Wentworth on the Siemens team as well. Spoke last time we were here about getting the process started of the facility analysis and evaluation, both operationally and from an energy perspective. As you're all mostly aware, more than likely, that we're in the midst of a performance contracting analysis to not only identify energy savings, but also deficiencies in the facilities, and coming up with an action plan to get some of these things fixed, not just to identify problems. But if we step back, we've done a lot of projects over the past 5 years with you guys, and then you guys have taken that on since then with Jim on the facility side and Dr. Morris and Sue, and you've done a great job of continuing the things that we had been part of a few years back. So in this analysis, like we talked about from the very beginning, more or less infrastructure and capital focus, more so than energy, because of all the things that we had done already in the past. So obviously, there's only so much you can take without literally shutting down boilers and not providing heat to the classrooms and whatnot. So what I've got here is a report that we've kind of condensed. This thing is about 100 and something pages long, but We've gone over this with your team, Dr. Morris, Jim, and Sue, many times. And just the other day we did it, thanks, Sean, again in their office, going over a lot of the highlights of the projects, some of the things that we're waiting for in terms of numbers, design numbers, ideas, thoughts, and then developing a project that makes sense financially to the district. So I think what I'll probably do is just kind of go through some of the highlights of this. My eyes are red and dry. It's because I have a 3-year-old that keeps waking me up to tell me that there's a fox in her room. Because I said that when you let the dog out, if you don't shut the door, there's a fox will run in the house. So that was pretty smart on my part. So every hour, Dad, the fox is under my bed. And then the 7-year-old hears it, and she has a fox under her bed. So it's been fun. Not that we're going to read this, but the point of this is, again, our focus, primarily healthy learning environment for the classroom. That was a big focus from the beginning. That was a big focus for everyone, not just Siemens, but your administrative team. refreshing to hear that, because a lot of projects we do with schools, the first thing they want to do is just reduce energy, and then it's the classroom. And this time around, it was, we want you to focus on the classroom. A healthy learning environment for the kids is paramount and the most important thing to our team and our school district. So it's been fun to do it from that perspective. So I'm not going to go through all that. We will provide all this information. We have provided all this information. Some of this is now blank for some reason. It got shifted around here. We will have an opportunity to meet with you guys if you'd like on a separate meeting we talked about in your administrative team's office the other day. If anybody would like to boil down a lot of the minutia of this stuff, I know you have some engineering background on the board. People want to get into the numbers, you really get into the weeds. We love it. We'll do it all day. Most of the time people tell us to stop talking because we like to do it so much. So if you'd like to have a separate meeting, we're all ears and open arms. So we will not hug, but we'll definitely talk. Like I said, so again, some of this stuff I'm going to just go through quickly, and stop me about whenever you want, but we're going to go through the utility side of it first. So the first thing we do is we get all utility information, which we've had over the years, historical data. That's our basis of the whole baseline, from just basically how are your buildings performing. And your buildings are obviously doing very well, especially for the past 5 years. You guys made crazy improvements since the first things we've ever done down here, just recommissioning this building here. So in looking at your energy use index, which is what we use, we score the buildings. We look at it from, electricity, water, oil, break it down for all fuel types and usages, just to find out where there may be weaknesses in the school district, from the boiler room to the classroom. And then we work back with our engineering team to bring in many subcontractors to generate both ideas, numbers, design opportunities, and also get competitive numbers. So we've done that. We've walked the buildings for the past 3 months. A lot of help with Jim and his team. We've had mechanical contractors, pipe fitters, ductwork companies, lighting experts, building envelope experts, especially at the middle school, to help get a perspective that maybe we don't see, especially from a historical perspective on that building. There's a lot of things there that are just not typical. So we've done and brought in an expert on every single individual measure. It's not just a kind of a thumb in the air. We think this is an opportunity. We've had individual experts on something that maybe we don't know something about. Obviously, you know us from the control side of it, the boiler side of it. That's our expertise. We would be the experts on that. When it comes to the most efficient urinals and water fixtures, we bring in an expert because we're not the experts in that. So we've done that here. We've done pressure tests on everything. So like I said, you want to get into that side of it, we'd love to do it, but I won't do that tonight because people will be asleep if you're not already asleep.
Is that surprising, by the way, when you did the benchmarks, that Mohammed is like the lowest?
Not necessarily surprising, because I understand some of this data is skewed. Like the middle school, for example, you'll see later in the report, has a fairly decent energy use index. I think it scores around a 50. And an ideal building is a 40. That doesn't mean it's a good building. It just means it's not ventilating properly. So then if you take it a step further and you say, okay, what's the cubic feet a minute of fresh air coming into the classroom? And ASHRAE standard says it should be 15 to 20 per student, and then you find out there is no air because the thing hasn't worked in quite a while and it's $100,000 to replace an air handler, you realize, okay, there's a reason it's efficient because it's just not bringing in air. So, I'm not saying that's the case, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. Like, there's no foxes running through here and stuff like that.
Just don't breathe.
Right, don't breathe. Stay awake, because test scores are important. The nice thing about this process is we're not going to spend our time, your time, taxpayers' dollars at the end of this thing investigating things that really make no sense to look at right now. So, a good example would be the boiler room here. While it's got a little bit of age on it, those boilers are made to last 50 years. You can keep retubing them, which you've done. They're bulletproof for all intents and purposes. They're not ideal, they're not what we'd pick today, but for all intents and purposes of this project, maybe a phase 4 would be addressing this boiler room. You consider this like a phase 3 we're doing now. We've done a few already. So we didn't spend a lot of time engineering a new boiler room because there's so many other fish to fry, so to speak. You know, the middle school, ventilation in all the schools, windows, building facade everywhere. So there's only so much you can address in a short amount of time. So we've identified it. We've got piles and piles of information and data which we've showed your team. So now we're trying to focus it down to what can the district actually implement from a financial perspective. Because obviously you're going to come up and you're going to see all of this stuff from these reports get, this is the one that kind of makes the most sense here. Sean, if you want to start down this one, I can talk at the same time. We take all of these numbers, and again, you can see at the top there, you've got $15 million worth of deficiencies that we've come up with. And that doesn't mean that you've done a terrible job and that's your district is crazy deficient, because we've garnered a lot more than that in some other school systems. That just simply, those are the things that we've identified that are opportunities for you to start considering. You've done it in your capital plan, and by the way, through the capital plan, we actually work the capital plan that Jim has into this project. So our goal is, and Dr. Morris asked a question the other day, how much of this, Jim, is in your capital plan? And of course, we've identified almost all of it. That's a big focus for us. So then what we do is we take it, we look at energy savings total. Then you go by building, as you can see.
So in his energy savings, so you do a capital improvement project, which is a one-off expenditure. You do the project, but then you're doing the energy savings. Is that on a yearly basis, or is that?
Those are annual energy savings.
Okay.
Yep. So at the top there, those are the project energy savings on an annual basis.
Okay.
And at this moment, that would be considered very conservative. The reason being is we don't know exactly what your scope is going to look like. So we're not going to, even though we've done most all of these measures a few hundred times, every building's a little bit different in the way it's going to perform. So if we think we're going to save 90,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, we're probably going to use 70,000 for the purposes of this, for our calculations, just to be conservative. Because if we come here tonight and talk about a great, you know, it's 116,000, and then we end up finding it's 50, we've got egg on our face. So these are conservative numbers, both from a rebate amount for 184. We think we could get much closer to, you know, 250 if we really figure out what the scope's going to look like, and then we'll get real numbers from the utility. But as you can see, this 6'4" Vanna White here is going to be dialing through. Everything is broken out from winter replacements, and this is it's your. Can you lift up this middle line so we can get the buildings broken out? But there it is. The Mohammed Middle Elementary School. So we broke out every little thing and got competitive numbers, but it's not done. Once we know what makes sense from a financial perspective, we'll get even better numbers. But those are engineered. People have walked through, laid their eyes and ears on it. They've done some math. So we feel decent about these numbers, but these are budget numbers at this point. So once we know, again, what will work from a financial perspective, then we'll bring them all back in, sharpen all the numbers, and get something that actually makes sense. But we look at windows for everything, building facade, and then you'll have a total at the end of each building. So you'll see at this building is $3.3 million for all those things, which would be air conditioning, window replacements. That's an electric car station at every building. That would be, again, that's in the report, but that would be a dual charging station. That's a credit card machine. So basically, if someone came up, you're tying that into your building. So if they want to plug their car in, they're using their credit card to pay for their usage. You're not going to be providing free electricity for the whole town of Durham. So don't worry there. We've priced it out from that way.
And so the high school, we asked Tom and Sean to address the issue of air conditioning in the tower, because the issue is in the spring and fall, the third floor becomes unbearable, and teachers are constantly looking for other locations to teach. They're leaving their teaching classrooms and finding places in libraries and other places on the first floor. So we felt that for the high school, that was a very important issue. And, you know, quite frankly, it wouldn't be something you would put in an annual budget. It would be something you'd do as a capital improvement.
I might be jumping ahead, but when does the prioritization come? I mean, you have all these things, you know, that in the best of all possible worlds, you could change. But does the prioritization come from you guys? Does it come from you working with Jim Rizicki? Because I mean, I'm kind of overwhelmed by just the numbers right now.
I'm sure. Yeah, I am too.
So, I mean, have you done that? How does it get to a point where you come to us and say, this is the most bang for the buck going forward to make changes?
Yep. Absolutely. We've done that once already, actually a couple times. We had a really good one the other day. It was probably a couple hours. We went through all the numbers. And I'll show you how we ultimately end up getting to that, because you're absolutely right. It can be overwhelming. It's overwhelming just to gather the information. Mm-hmm. But to Dr. Morse's point, what we end up doing is we do something like this, where we identify in the clouded area the spaces that are hot. And we try to price it out first, second, and third floor, starting with the third floor. The problem is when you start air conditioning a facility, we've done it many, many, many times in schools, is that teachers get jealous, occupants get jealous, because one wing of the building is now perfect and the other is stifling, and it's a huge difference from a learning perspective. So
Tom, just as you're collecting your thoughts there, and I'll interject. So the direct answer to your question, Tom, is we wanted you as a school board to see the scope of the work tonight, and then between this meeting and the next meeting, administratively with Siemens, Sue, Jim, myself, Todd, will sit down and say, okay, we'll ask the very question you just asked. What's the biggest bang for a buck? And then we'll bring that prioritized list back to you in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Not for a decision again, but for you to be able to collect that information and say, well, do you as a board agree with the priorities we've outlined? And then in 4 weeks, the second meeting in November, we would ask for your support to go forward. So we're seeing it as a 6-week process, giving you the scope tonight, then we'll provide you with the priority list at the next meeting, and then you guys would be able to have that discussion, provide us guidance, and at the next meeting, we'll implement whatever guidance you give us, and then present that as the work that we would ask you to act on.
So in 4 weeks, we'd authorize this performance contract to go forward, is that?
That's exactly what I would hope.
Okay.
So I'm a little confused in terms of the timing. So is this for next year's budget? Is this the little, is this that bond, the standalone bond that we've been talking about?
This is the lease. Yep, this is the lease where we would take Jim Ruzicki's budget and operationalize this lease process inside his budget.
Okay. I'm still confused, I'm sorry.
The answer to your question, short, is yes.
Okay.
Could you go back to the slide before with the numbers?
Yeah, so
I had a question about.
Okay.
So just looking at this and wondering if this is a fair way to be looking at it, is in the left column we're seeing what the yearly savings are, in the right column we're seeing what the cost of the project is. And so roughly we could figure out how many years it's going to take for that project to make up for what the cost was. Mm-hmm. And then I think maybe to the point with, let's say, the air conditioning, moving it beyond just the hard dollar figure, then we're also going to talk about the educational social benefit to weight the numbers. So is that the process?
Yeah, so when we used Siemens 5 years ago, we very much focused in on energy conservation efforts. But we've taken all the low-hanging fruit. And so now we're at the place when, let's use one example, Windows. Windows never pay you back in terms of investment. They take forever. They're not energy efficient. But the windows we have across the district all need to be replaced. So you run into, now we're into, using Tom's terms, we're into a third phase of what do we need to do across the district in terms of improving our buildings. Mm-hmm. Some of those issues do have energy savings. Most of these issues, like windows, if you do use your example, Kenny, never pay you back. 30 years out, you'll be replacing the windows again, and that's about the life cycle of a window. So so there's a lot of the work here isn't about energy savings, it's about maintaining the facilities.
Right. And not just that specific dollar point,
Exactly.
but what is the right thing to be doing as well.
So the moral of the story is to get rid of the windows.
Across the Boy, well, it's funny you say that, but in the 70s, they actually did that.
Right.
They shut down
Right.
schoolhouse windows, they bricked
Right.
them up, they boarded
Right.
them over, and they went to air handlers to circulate the air. And then studies came out about how unhealthy it is not to have sunlight on human beings. And so they went through this crazy, energy efficient state during the 70s when oil went through the roof and there were lines at gas stations, and that was the response. And then, a generation later, people saying, this is nuts. And they're pounding holes through and putting windows back in and, recalibrating air handling because what looked good on paper was crazy in real life. You basically were trapping kids and adults in enclosed boxes.
So if I could just come back, so essentially what you've done is you've looked at these 4 buildings or 5, whatever, and looked at essentially every possible improvement that could be made to those buildings. Is that fair or is that wrong?
Yeah, and I think what I was going to do is listening to you guys talk, because sometimes presenting this much information in a short period of time it's about an impossible task, because you're trying to, it's overwhelming, it really is. I totally understand it. You should have seen their faces when we rolled it all out on the conference table the other day. The cluttered area, for example, the first, second, and third floor, to answer you, I think will show you how we came about, is we know that's a problem. It's on the capital plan, it's an issue. So what we do is we walk there with our engineers, Jim, our own team, and an expert in that particular field and say, what's the most efficient way of doing this from an energy and an operational perspective? You have fresh air, so you have heat and you have fresh air, and those units are fine. We service them, you take good care of them, there's plenty of life left in those. So can we modify those existing units to provide cooling? So we do an analysis and we say the ductwork just simply isn't big enough and you can't insulate it, and it would be really expensive to basically turn that unit into an air conditioning unit and ventilation. So then we look at it and say, would it be smarter to do what's called a VRF system, something more, it's kind of state of the art right now for refrigeration. And now you have a separate air conditioning system, separate ventilation and heat, that's all tied together. And that became the most efficient way of doing it. So then we take those numbers and we put it into this tool. And in this tool, we show you, like I showed you on the cash flow, project summary on the cost of it and the savings, and then we take it and we put it into the cash flow, which is ultimately what ends up being how you guys decide what you want to do. So you can see the project cost down here, and up top you'll see, and I'm not going to talk about overwhelming, but these are the terms of the financial, this is the lease purchase. It's not a bond, it's a tax-exempt lease purchase. So we build this pro forma with your team to figure out what the district can conceptually do. And we pick and choose this by going back to that project summary tool. So right now it's a $15.7 million project, just to show you as an example. And we want to wait on that just because, well, from a cost perspective. So we'll go back to the cash flow, and now you see it's changed it to a $14 million project, decreased energy savings a little bit possibly, and now it's lowered your annual contribution. So that, you do that for every measure. And we've done that once already as a team with you guys to kind of go through. Then we find out of that list, what's the most important thing right now for the healthy classroom environment, for the operation of the facility, life cycle, what's more likely to fail sooner than later, so it doesn't put you in a bad position from a ventilating heating perspective, for everything. That's electrical services going into the building. We looked at transformers, everything. Lighting in the classroom, so there's LED quotes for every lamp and ballast and switch in the district. We look at all that, provide you the list that we think makes the most sense and what we would do, and then you're able to take the numbers and make it work within your own budget. You guys basically make the choice. You decide how much of this you want to bite off under this phase. You guys know your budget and what you can afford. We simply don't. We can just show you what it's going to take to get you there. And then whatever is not done, like many of these other districts we've done several projects with, it's remaining. You know the cost of it, which is why you went this way. You've delineated everything right down to the penny of what it would take to design it and implement it, and then more than likely when it's going to need to be done. So right now you're basically creating a master plan for all your facilities.
Building out phase 4 ahead of you.
Exactly.
So
Right.
Tom, just in terms of summary, can you tell the board what the total is per building?
Sure can. So I took out a big one there, put that back in. So this would be your high school at the top here. That's a $3 million budget. And again, we'll go through all those things afterwards, so it makes the most sense. The transformers, those are the electrical panels, there's 28 of them. It's a big high school. There's a lot of standby heat loss in those things. Not really a life safety issue, but something Jim identified that, man, there's a lot of heat radiating from these. I'd like to dial these in to be something that was more efficient. So that could be something you wait on or do. Middle school, kind of a different animal. It's a $5.6 million budget for that particular building.
But I guess my question is, why would we want to spend that much money on the middle school when we're talking about?
Well, remember, we wanted the numbers on the middle school for the facilities committee.
Right.
So when we come back with our priorities, we will not be including the middle school in the work unless it's a life safety
Right,
issue.
unless it's something that, or it's failing, obviously, if
Yeah.
there's something that's
But
immediately
this was
failing.
This was
Okay.
important data for the middle school facilities committee to have.
And as the middle school committee is charged, is to look at every possible option. And so this helps to make a decision.
Okay.
And the other part of that, Denise, is, so even if the board said, well, we want to do all these things anyway, you still haven't addressed the academic insufficiency of the building. This is just, infrastructure
Right.
items. So
You'd still have classes that are
you
too
still
small.
have classrooms that are too
Right,
small.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
This particular building it's an anomaly for sure, because be nice with it. There are so many things that have a domino effect in this list. So when you start to address ventilation, lighting, there's classrooms that have no ceilings in them. There's just wires hanging down. Some of the windows are just inoperable. There is ventilation or there isn't ventilation. We did a teacher survey of this building, which we included all their comments in it, and they were fairly honest. It's good feedback, I think, for making improvements to that building, but they were pretty glaring, and that was, there's times when students wear jackets, and I have all the quotes in here if you want to see them too, but the students wear jackets, or it's too hot, that they're glaring off, or sometimes cancel class, or move class, or just, it's a really bad environment. It was a universal thought process on that. So the issue there for us or any company that does this work every day is that you put in new LED lights and you attach it to a ceiling that is non-existent. So then you say, okay, now we got to put in a new ceiling. Well, then when you put a new ceiling, all your fire alarm devices, if they're present, have to come down and meet code compliance, right? So now you're not grandfathered to anything when it comes to the fire alarm side of it, so you're bringing the whole building up to speed. Then you're looking at ADA compliance. Then you're opening up Pandora's box with the historical nature of things. So this particular building, we brought in a building envelope specialist and asked them to do their analysis on the outside of the building just to make sure we weren't really missing anything, because anyone with basic knowledge of facilities would come up and say it's pretty structurally sound, it's a tough building. But when you really get into the minutia of that building and someone that really knows what they're talking about, there's a lot of issues with that building on the outside. So the facade is not, and we have their report that they gave us. I guess our suggestion would be, if we were going to spend $5.6 million, it wouldn't be in this project. We would rather see you spend the money somewhere else. And we're the ones that would be doing the work. So that's an honest answer. If you could say, we really want to put $5 million in this building, we would probably beg you not to do it, and then maybe do another phase later on down the road, or spend the money somewhere else that you could use it. It's one of those things, once you start doing things, then you haven't even addressed the boiler plant. You've got 2 boiler plants, while you've got newer boilers, they're 2 separate plants. So then you're going to want to bring them into one plant because you've addressed all these other things, but you still have this huge issue with your boiler plant. I could go on and on and on about it, but I think the teacher's comments probably speak volumes.
Tom, just along those lines, would you and Sean be willing to attend a facilities committee meeting to talk about the middle school issues specifically? Sure. Because I think that committee would really want to pick your brains along this line, since you've done such detailed analysis of the building.
Yeah, I mean, anything they could bring up about it, we'll have data on it, so absolutely, sure.
Okay.
Then you're moving on to your next building here, the Mohammed is 2.6. You'll see a lot of the, reciprocating measures, but trying to address, again, the classroom environment. A lot of these things we addressed in other projects, like I had said, but because of their efficiency and nature, a lot of times when you're adding air conditioning to a building, of course, you're not really saving energy, right? So the first few projects were highly geared on energy savings. Now you're an efficient school system, but you got to address the infrastructure. So that's really what this is, again. Massway would be 3.3. And then SAU would be 656. So one of the things, like I said, we had it in the back, and I can bring it down here. I'm sorry about the formatting. It kind of gets shifted around here when it will move over to this PC, but I don't know if you can see some of those comments. But these are not from us.
These are the teacher survey comments?
Yeah. Yep. So we do it through the SurveyMonkey, so it's anonymous. They can make their own comments. It's not like we're sitting in front of them making them say bad things or good things. They do it on their own fruition. So these are their comments. And this is not all of them, but we just took a bunch and just put it on the sheet. And
Feels like a tin can.
Yeah. Yep.
I bet those teachers would love to be in a module.
And then however you process data, we've got it, both words, pie charts, however you want to. So we do this in almost every project when we're looking at, when we walk into a building and someone's looking at us weird, we let them know what we're doing and if there's any input they have. And you can tell just by walking around, Jim has great relationships with all the teachers, staff, and people in the facilities because they're very amenable to give information and provide feedback, obviously, on their facilities. So we've got a lot of great stuff here. Bless you. When you look at facade, again, those are the cool charging stations, but I've got a good picture of the middle school ceilings that just, when you, right here, you look at that thing and you say, how are we going to put LED lights in there? How can we even make sense of this? Then you address the fire alarm and then the windows themselves, because they're going to be up against the ceiling, and because they're historic in nature, you're not really sure where to start. So on that spreadsheet, you saw the number for windows, you saw a number for addressing the historical aspect of the buildings. That's just for the things that we know of a building that size you're going to have to address. What the actual building envelope specialists recommended was carried was $2 million. So we were trying to be conservative because the numbers are so much higher here. It had the appearance that we're trying to make this building look really bad. It's not. We're actually conservative. It could have been more like $7 million. Again, we used $775,000. They recommended $2 million in additional costs. And these are the guys that actually do historical buildings. So they would provide the bid spec for people to bid on the work. So they collect these numbers all the time. But again, it would have been twice as much as the other schools. So we're trying to be conservative in the numbers.
But Tom, wouldn't it make sense in this particular building at least to put the range in?
Sure.
Just so people could really get a sense of it,
Like
someplace
worst case,
between,
yeah.
Here and here. This is the base, but it could be as much as this much.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't think that you're trying to, game this. This is the reality of a building that has been added onto 4 times and started out in 1936. And this is the information the community is looking for when we start talking about why is it time to do something different than what we have. So I would put the range in on this particular building, and it's easy to just say this is, the professionals are saying it's someplace between here and here.
Right. Because the numbers we've gotten from Portland Glass on the windows, the $1.8 million, they didn't carry money to address historical. We actually called them back to make sure we didn't double dip on numbers again, just to make sure we're not overinflating things to make anything look better or worse. So you could easily do that. I mean, you can see at the end of their comments here, historical costs similar to projects tend to range 1.5 to 2 million depending on the interior impact. And interior impact, if you saw the inside of that room, as you saw, the windows went to the ceiling, and obviously that ceiling is not going to be conducive to adding anything to it. So I would think that the impact would be more in the line of 1.5 to 2.
And the committee itself has, Michael is an engineer, but we also have architects on the committee and capital developers on the committee, so they'll understand these numbers in the truest sense. I mean, for many of us, it's, we go on your word, but there's experts on this committee who, if they felt that your number was, challengeable, they'll challenge you.
Yeah, and that's good. We do it ourselves. I mean, we've done it with Jim already. We got numbers back from certain contractors, and we were like, no way. This is not unacceptable. But we needed it for the purposes of trying to gather information. Right now, construction is good. The economy is good. So it's really hard to get the quality contractors to get you exactly what you want within a certain amount of time right now. But there's already been numbers we've received that we think we can do better. But there's others that look really good, and we look at them saying, are you sure? This is a big building. Mm-hmm. So all together, the average, we've done them all many, many times. We feel pretty good about these numbers.
So I'm trying to envision, like, it seems to me like what we take this information and then prioritize and time different things, like what would happen in year one. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to, because I've imagined how this would almost translate to a strategic plan, because it would seem to me that you'd say this is immediate, this could be put off. I don't know, Jim, if you want to like say, because how this could then translate into that. Am I right?
Absolutely. And just remember, like, over the past 4 years that I've been here, the strategic plan was the Davis-Goudreau report. And we've really attacked that. So that was the very first priority, is this. Let's get all of that done that we didn't get done yet. And then, like he said, it just kind of dominoed from there when we're looking at just the age of the windows. And it doesn't mean we have to do all of them. So this number kind of flipped me out as well, but it's like, okay, let's, as we take a step back and really drill down into the real priority of it, I think we'll find that not all this is absolutely necessary. I'm sorry. I want you to have a business, but so it is going to drive priority in the future as well.
So when we approve a plan, say 4 weeks down the road, it would be some kind of like almost staged plan that you would say, these are the priorities, this is the cost year by year, and this is what's going to.
I think a lot of this too, by having a construction manager, we're going to have multiple projects happening at the same time, district-wide. Yeah. I mean, I have a feeling that if we did the majority of this, I would say even half of it, it'd probably be a 2-year timeline to do windows and these larger mechanical things. I think it takes some time, but one of the things that made this whole thing attractive is we don't really pay until a year after the project's completed, and we get a pretty good warranty for the time after it's done, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was going to go to next, and great segue there, is there's a reason that almost all schools are using this as the funding vehicle for projects right now, which is the lease purchase performance contracting route. And that is because, as Jim had mentioned, you're guaranteeing the operational efficiency of everything you're putting in. So it's energy savings, yes, but we're design building these boiler rooms, air handlers, VRF systems. This is not someone else that's getting bids. People bid to bid spec, and if it's not in that bid spec and it's messed up 3 years, you're the one holding the bag. Where this process, we're guaranteeing the work. In 3 years, if something is not working correctly, Siemens comes back and fixes it. So everyone that works competitively gets the work, works under our umbrella, it's under our umbrella. So ultimately, anything that happens, whether it's a bunch of urinals that are no longer efficient or not flushing, you're coming back to us, not the plumber that installed them that may not be in business anymore. to your point of the payment structure, how it ends up being is, again, you guys as a team, not with us standing there, unless you want it because you have questions, but you dial it into a cash flow that makes sense for you. And again, you can pick a term. In this case, I have 17 here. State of New Hampshire allows you 20. And then you have an interest rate to plug in here. So that interest rate is not just we go out and help you get competitive RFPs. We actually build the RFP with Sue and Dr. Morris. Once you have a project dialed in, a ways down the road, once we know what that project is, we have real competitive pricing, engineered pricing and scope. We then create an RFP for banks to competitively bid on this project as well. So we'll establish a term, whether you want 10, 15, 17, 20 years, whatever that is. You determine it because you're staging it in your budget, right? You know what you can afford. Then we send that out to multiple banks, and we get competitive numbers for your financing. So we've done this pretty conservatively by using 3%. We just sent out a big competitive bid for Hopkinton schools, and it was 2.6 at 17 and a half years. So you guys, from a financial perspective, you're in the driver's seat. You're one of the better school systems.
So when you do this, you essentially build a payment within the budget, and you don't separately bond, right?
Right.
We're actually in one right now.
Yeah.
That you guys approved 5 years ago. We're coming to the tail end of that, but that's how we're able to do, well, I would say $700,000 about 5 years ago in renovations to the district, inclusive of LED lighting and a lot of VFDs, variable frequency drives, and commissioning actually.
So when, if we approve this, a lot of these projects like replacing windows and all that, would this all be done like next summer or when, like what are we looking at as far as the time frame?
And that's what Jim had said, is that there's a tremendous amount of work here, so we'd set up a construction schedule. We determine what that's going to be based on what you choose for a scope. So right now, I don't know if it's a day or 500 days of construction. Obviously, that's based on the scope, right? Once we have that dialed in, we then make that part of the financial package to bid on. The whole tax-exempt lease purchase mechanism is attractive, again, because you get a year of construction to do the work with no payments. So by the time you actually start making payments on this project, that's why you have construction savings here in this first column, you're probably not actually budgeting, well, the money's already in your budget, but you're not moving that money over to a payment for about 2 to 3 fiscal years from right now. Because by the time we actually get to a project, you're probably a few more months out if you're going to get to a project, then you get competitive numbers. Say it's a year for construction. You're not making your payment until the construction is 100% complete from today. So that could be a year and a half. So from a fiscal year standpoint, that is June 1st of probably 1920. Before you're even moving that money around. But again, you're not adding money to your budget. It's not a bond. You're actually shifting money within your current operation budget to make the payment. That's what you guys determine what works.
Okay.
A couple of things. One, good luck with the foxes. Two, and maybe even taking the middle school out of the equation, and you're looking at structural deficiencies, how it affects education. You're looking at energy efficiency. Is there a place as well to look at renewable sources of energy? And do you do that? And then the other question is a broader question. And Siemens has done great work for us. The cost savings that we've realized have been tremendous. But, and maybe to Dr. Morse, is it our responsibility, though, to hear from other companies and hear what they feel
thanks, Kenny, for asking that. You have a policy that allows us to go to preferred vendor. Siemens has been an excellent partner for us, and so this is not something you have to go to bid for. They're doing all the legwork. When we do the RFP, they'll go out and seek the subcontractors. So my recommendation is that we have a history with Siemens that's been excellent. They're the ones that recommissioned this building and saved the district tens of thousands of dollars, millions actually, when you get down to a 5-year scan. So my recommendation is go preferred vendor on this because of our history with them. They've done all of our work for the last 5 years, and going out to get an alternative company in this particular sense, I don't think makes a lot of sense.
And I'm totally in
your policy
agreement,
allows
but I just wanted to make sure that we are doing what we legally need to
Yep,
do. is all.
and you absolutely can stay with your policy and preferred vendor. That's why you had that language added 5 years ago so that the district wouldn't waste money. And when we had a good relationship, we could maintain that relationship.
Even though we had the relationship, you still went through the legal process of the RFQ, the request for qualifications, which you advertised for, and we responded to them. That's what we were selected on that basis. We were not just given the project. I mean, I thought.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, just for clarity.
So I'm just thinking, because I think we're going to have to move on, but I think our next meeting, we'll have a priority,
Yep.
you know, this has like a world of possibilities, and we're going to pick, Jim, you know, you're going to like come to us with the priorities that we would want to see happen, right? So we'd have some numbers and some tasks that Stevens would do. Is that?
I'm so thankful that you guys trust me, but with a project of this size, I would like other eyes on it. I already have thoughts swimming around in my mind about what I would want to do first and what I don't want to do at all. But I would love to get your guys' take on. I want to make a collective.
When we do the prioritizing, it's Jim and Sue, Todd, and I. When the actual decisions are made, will be this body based on those recommendations. So, you know, we'll be listening to what Siemens thinks is important. We'll be listening to what Jim thinks is important, and then what Sue thinks we can do financially, and that's what'll inform our recommendations.
Okay.
Can I ask just one thing? Can we get the whole report? It's like, you know,
Absolutely.
Not that I'm a total glutton for punishment, but I'd love to read just through the whole report.
We'll gladly get that to the board.
Start a book club and we can go over it together. It'd be a blast.
Because you said it's like 100 pages, right?
I mean, yeah, when you look at the whole thing, we can dial it down into something a little bit easier to read, but.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that, or either that or have maybe a copy available to look at the
digital, right?
SAU, or digitally, digitally would be fine, I would think, unless.
I've already started breaking it, since our last meeting, these guys already asked for that, so I started breaking it down into the more specific stuff, but since we like it all, it was hard to delete pages, so it was harder than I thought it was going to be, but we'll give you something smaller.
Okay.
One quick thing is we've done some work with your 7th graders again in John Silverio's class. We did some renewable energy classes about wind power versus fossil fuel. So this is just some stuff. He's been pretty excited and he's thanked us profusely for coming in. This is Mark, one of our mechanical engineers who's working on this project, but the kids get to design their own mini wind turbines, and they're powered by a household fan and tied to a small electrical panel. And whoever has the best design will generate the most resistance wind power, and it will power the little circuit board, and it plays a tune, and has to play the tune long enough for them to figure out what the song is. And
Cool.
when they do that, they win a prize, and sometimes we do competitions, girls against the boys. I have 2 girls, the girls usually win. And so in the beginning, we show the video of renewable power and the difference between that and fossil fuel. And then we get into these are the kits right here that you can see. They love the video, obviously. Then after that, they get to make their own, and it's a blast. We left the kits behind so they can use them over and over again. This is just the start of this kind of stuff. The more you do under your project, for example, the car charging stations, if you were to do those, you can implement those into the curriculum, and that's something that we would love to be part of, to help bring that into the classroom. We've done it a lot. We've done it a lot with even the calculations on the project. So the little data loggers that we use to collect all the information, those collect information on a 15-minute interval basis. You can take that and do calculations, turn them into pie charts, graphs on carbon footprint reduction, what it means to the environment, how many cars it takes off the road when you change all your LED lights. It took 400 cars off the road, or 10,000 tons of carbon. They can do those calculations at the high school level pretty easily, and we've done them and worked with 7th, 8th grade high school science teachers to show them how to use it, leave it all behind, and make it part of your. You can go right to the charging stations and show what it's doing. Those are all connected to a cloud-based system, so you can go on there and get all the information you want. It's pretty cool. So renewable, we looked at a lot of things. Biomass is not your rates for therms of natural gas is so low, it's unbelievable. So this high school uses about $75,000 a year in gas. That's crazy low. Biomass isn't even close to touching that. Same with all the other buildings. So yes, we looked at renewable energy. Solar's probably the only that would make sense from a thermal basis for hot water. But again, a lot of kids aren't showering at high school anymore. I mean, hopefully they're showering at home, but they're not in high schools. But so you do the math. Yeah, we love to do it. It just doesn't make financial sense unless it's an academic purpose. And I think the charging stations would be a great way to start. So we can make all that work in conjunction. The STEM stuff after the fact, using your existing project, is one of the funnest parts of this whole thing. So I would look forward to that.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I wonder if we could have the Student Senate report next in case, Hannah Jane, in case the other things start to take up time. So would that be all right if we did that? Okay, Hannah Jane, okay?
Sounds good to me.
I know you'd love to sit through all this other stuff, but yeah. Good luck with the Foxes.
So, as I mentioned before, so Spirit Week planning is all wrapped up because Spirit Week is all over. So the Senate has moved on to discussing what we'd like to do next. And yesterday morning, we had a very productive meeting with Ms. Philippone, where we talked about how we'd like to expand on Senate. Last year, we began a discussion about how we'd like to increase our responsibilities and become more than just the Spirit Week planners in the eyes of the students. And we bounced around some ideas, and I'll keep you guys updated on that matter. Yesterday, we kind of were just discussing some opinions and ideas that we had of how we can increase what we're doing as a student government and kind of add on more responsibilities and events that we can do, which I think will be really helpful to have a nice change in the Senate and what we do, because we have a lot of interest in student government. The Senate also discussed the parking issue that I had brought up last week with Ms. Philippone, and the senators had some strong opinions and good ideas, and we're planning on continuing that discussion in the coming weeks. The senior class is already preparing for graduation. Tomorrow morning, the student government is meeting with Ms. Philippone to begin talking about venues and kind of get the ball rolling on that. The junior class has begun planning this year's prom. I don't know how far they've gotten on that, but I know they've started their committee for the prom planning committee. The sophomore class hasn't yet planned anything. However, the freshmen have been working on getting a movie night in the auditorium. And then we also have the fall play, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is on the 26th, 27th, and 28th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. I heard this year's play is really good, and we have a lot of talented people in the drama program who have been working tirelessly on the play. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and I hope that you guys will have the chance to go and see it as well. And then we also had...
sorry, go ahead.
We also had our senior girls soccer night last night and senior boys soccer night 2 nights ago.
And we also talked about possibly on the 31st,
Yes.
any board members coming to the Student Senate. And because I think at the last meeting, we talked about having some conversation. We thought that date might work. So it's be 7:45,
Yes,
right?
7:45, and then I'll send you guys out more information about that, but on the 31st.
So, and if there's more than 4, we're just talking to the students. There's no problem with quorums, is there?
No, you're just visiting with the students.
Okay, so the more the merrier on that one. So that's the 31st, which is Tuesday. So if you can make it,
And how long would it go? So
The first bell rings at 8:10, so
just be 25
Yeah.
minutes.
Kind of a
or-
short, just more listening than,
Yeah.
just to
And we
hear some
thought-
student
And we
opinions.
thought, and we thought that
discussion.
since the issue of homework is kind of on our agenda for sure, and I think it's on the agenda of the Student Senate, that might be the focus of what we're going to talk about, homework stress, the amount,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
That's definitely a common interest of both of ours.
Okay,
and where
great.
is it in the building?
I'll let you guys know. I'm going to see if maybe we can find a place where all of us can fit, because I know it gets pretty packed with the whole Senate and Mr. Cangelo, the Senate Advisors Room. So I'll see if I can find another place, but I'll send out more information on that.
Great. Thank you for doing that. So Superintendent's report.
Great, thank you very much. Just a few things that I want to highlight tonight. Last night I attended a community forum on race in South Berwick. And it was interesting how they did it. They did it by inviting a UNH professor, and he presented to a room full of people in the town library. And it was very informative, but the most important piece I picked up out of the meeting was a connection with Berwick Academy. They have a diversity coordinator in their high school, and he has a fixed curriculum in the middle school and high school, and it goes right back to the issue that Michael raised at the last meeting. So we have all these wonderful things that we do throughout the district related to diversity and inclusion, but you know, what's the guarantee that every child in the district would get, you know, a quality curriculum? So came back this morning, contacted Todd and said, we've got a great connection. Emailed him today. Todd and I are going to go visit him next week to see what they have implemented. So the issue of race it's not just happened in Oyster River. It's of course happened in Claremont. It's happened in South Berwick, and it's happened in Portsmouth. So it's not a unique issue to us. I think you know, this issue is percolating throughout the state, and in the south east quadrant, it's come up in multiple districts. So going back to what we've done so far, you know, Todd talked about the curriculum audit. Now we have a resource to take that curriculum audit to and start talking about how we can formalize process in the district. The diversity forum is going on next week. I mean, I have canvassed every media outlet that I could possibly canvass, so that's been put out there. I've sent it to parents' inboxes, principals have put it in their newsletters, posted it in their buildings, and it's really open to the entire community. It's not restricted to parents, so if anybody in the community wants to attend, they're invited. It's 7 o'clock next Wednesday night. I'm telling you, we got some really great parents on the forum, people who have been involved in diversity issues for decades, people who are published authors, really a wonderful group of dedicated parents. In addition, I've asked a couple of UNH students to represent our, if you will, our student voice. Again, I was trying to avoid using our own students because I didn't want them to be in a place of discomfort. So reaching out to the university students has worked out great. We have 3 students who are going to participate. And then, you know, it will we'll have representation from Rogers Johnson from the NAACP, and also Andrew Smith from the state disproportionate minority contact office, and he's the director of that office. So I'm hoping that all of you can find the time to be there. I'm hoping that we have, literally I hope we have hundreds of people show up. We are using the cafeteria for the first time. Walked through it tonight with Alex and laid out how the sound system would be set up, where the forum will be. And we've also tied Doris's community supper into it, so people who are coming out of work and don't have time to go home and make supper, the community supper will be sponsored by our child nutrition program. The one hiccup that we have had is childcare. I reached out to the university, Suzanne's reached out to her student body, and the most that we can get a commitment from so far is only 4 students, 4 high school students, and I don't think that we should try to run child care if we can't get a significant number of bodies, because we really don't know how many people would need child care. So unless that number gets bigger over the course of Monday and Tuesday, I'm at the point with the number I have right now that I'd have to say that we're not in a position to provide childcare. So that could change over the next few days, but that's where we are right now. I had a conversation with Tom and Denise in our agenda setting about the possibility of having a special board meeting and provide you guys the same diversity training that the staff is having. And remember, the diversity training is happening not just to teachers, but to administrators, bus drivers, cooks, custodians, maintenance, IT, everybody. So that's about 400 people. By the end of next week, we'll be about 60% through the staff. Every day, we do every time a training happens, we send out a 3-question survey to the participants of that day. And the reason we're doing that is we didn't want to wait to the end and then the beginning people forget all about what the training was, or it's so far removed from their life. So Todd has customized the survey to the participants on a given day, and we've been getting really great feedback. So curriculum audit, diversity training, and the forums next week. And then, the question that was asked last week, what's the next steps? Now I can talk about the next step, which is I'm working with the diversity coordinator at Berwick Academy and figuring out how we make sure that we have 100% coverage on this issue, K through 12. And also the students have committed, university students have committed to working with Suzanne and going into our classrooms and talking about issues of diversity and acceptance and inclusion. And the final thing I would say tonight around this issue is I really built a really great working relationship with the people who have helped me build this forum, and I asked them to be a standing committee for me to advise me in terms of diversity issues, and they were universally pleased to be asked. They had actually, one of them actually expressed that she was sad that this was our last planning meeting because she had enjoyed the dialogue and the conversation and direction that the district is going and wanted to continue to be a participant. So pleased to say that they are willing to continue to advise me on a monthly basis, where I would have a set of critical friends who I could bounce ideas off in relation to next steps. So that's where we are, and I think the forum is a major event in the district, and I'm hopeful, of course, that it's a success.
Jim, just going back to something we talked about earlier, because we talked about having a special diversity section for the school board. We were thinking with so many sections going on, whether we could individually attend one that's already scheduled, rather than to ask for one more. Does that seem reasonable?
And Todd can send you out the remaining schedule for the year.
Would that be workable for me? Yeah.
That would be wonderful. I think it's what I said to Tom and Denise, I think it's symbolic. I attended the first one because I wanted the staff to know that what I was asking them to do, I would do. And I think it's also symbolic for the school board to step into this particular role and say we're committed to this issue as well, and it's a way of you all stepping forward and letting the faculty know that you're behind this. So Todd will get out the schedule, and you guys can plant yourselves in where it's convenient to your schedules. We tell you we have the rest of this week, Thursday and Friday training. We have all of next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday training. And after next week, it goes to just Friday training. So because we'll have done so much of the staff in the month of October that we felt we could get it a little bit more manageable.
And actually tomorrow we have morning and afternoon.
And that really is the focus of my report tonight, Tom, so thank you.
Well, then, we didn't, you guys see some of the middle school facilities met. And my sense of it was we decided on 2 subcommittees, one of which would look at set up a kind of set of criteria. And obviously, there's a whole bunch of options. What are the criteria we're going to use to look at those options? And we had a land committee that if we were to look outside for land, what would be the criteria for assessing whether that piece of land would be viable for a school? Obviously, no commitment has been made to go in that direction, but in terms of due diligence, we figure we need to kind of figure out what, if we do look for land, what's a matrix or set of criteria that we're going to use to determine whether that piece of land is viable for a middle school building. So those are the two kind of subcommittees that have been set up, and I think in the next meeting they'll kind of report, and then we'll begin to work through the options that have been put before us. Is that much fair?
Yep, we'll report out on the two matrices that are developed, and we'll have Siemens there to talk about their work.
Okay.
So can I say one thing, because I did drop a big piece of paper, which is our economic development, and Kenny touched on it initially. I know this isn't the charge of the facilities committee, but it actually goes back to where you're talking about the planning of our budget and the impact on the taxes of residents. So when your town does a budget, they should throw out a projection. We do like a 10-year projection out, which is like your CIP goes in there along with your budget growth. If you look at the report I just gave you, that's Durham's projection out 5 years, along with outstanding development that'll go in to mitigate the cost of your budget. If you can build out a budget and tell us, if you can look over that and hopefully duplicate that, bring that back from Madbury and bring that back from Lee, it would be extremely helpful.
Okay.
Not to give you a little homework, but again, instead of...
We may not be able to do that because...
Well, I'm not actually asking the school.
We'll ask the huge staff of the town of Madbury to
I'm
take it
actually
right on.
asking the Madbury representative and the Lee representative to go back to your selectmen,
I'll let you handle it.
even though you guys are like smaller than us. But it's like, if you really are going to do a impact, tax impact like that, you have to have an idea where the town is going and how the town can mitigate it. And it's, again, the report has been provided to you of what Durham is doing. It would be, again, very helpful if you want to think strategically long-term what's occurring in your town.
Okay. So it is 9 o'clock. I was wondering if we could take a 5-minute break now and then come back and...
But before I'm sorry, I just wanted to go back to the diversity form. I had one quick
sure,
question.
sorry, go ahead.
And this is more for the board than for you, Dr. Morse. I appreciate seeing the school messenger announcement go out. Beyond that, I have only seen one additional posting, and it was in the parents and preschoolers group email. I checked my email right before tonight and searched specifically for it. I've not seen anything from the school, from the town, or from the PTO, at least from Willamette, where I'm most connected. So I kind of wanted to ask the rest of the board if you've seen some of the publicity about it or not. And
There was some in Foster's.
Foster's and the radio, it was on the radio.
Okay.
Yeah. The towns are, we send it to them.
Right. I don't think it was in, so the Madbury is once a month, so that's not going to get out before then.
And they told us the other day when we were doing the Madbury presentation that their list is only 80 people. So.
And I'm one of them, so.
There you go. So we get them to post it at the town,
Okay, 5 minutes?
4,
I wonder if there's,
there's a movie. The movie is from 4:30 to 6.
Okay, we got,
Remember this, it's like
We gotta go.
Halloween 2 or something like that.
okay.
Sorry.
can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Getting back to the diversity training, for those of us that might not be able to attend, I'm wondering if there's just handouts or what have you that we could perhaps, if I don't know how much of it, I'm sure it's very interactive, but if there's any handouts or anything like that that we could have, maybe we could, because I'm just finding out from the Times is I don't think it's going to work for me.
So it's more interactive than it is handouts.
Yeah.
Each individual has presented their own little piece with their critical questions.
Okay.
But we are videotaping it.
Oh, okay. Okay, then that'll be fine then.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have the Barrington tuition to approve the new rates. Sue?
Yes, Tim pulled the numbers together, did the calculation, and 5.98% is what we're recommending for next year, to bring the rate to $16,493 for Barrington students. Questions?
I had a question just in terms of student support services. Why had such a big jump? Do you sense of that?
The one-to-ones that some of the Barrington special needs kids come with.
No,
That'd be
actually,
like
that's
special needs?
counseling.
What?
You're talking about the,
Well, there's like almost a $200,000 increase in student support services.
that's counseling, nursing. We increased nursing staff at the high school. That's what that one is.
It's their share.
It's their share, right.
Right.
So that's what is encompassed in that student support services. Those are all other services other than special ed and regular ed. So it's the counseling department, nurses, library services, that's all lumped into there. So remember, we made an addition in the high school to that.
Okay.
We added a nursing position.
Okay. Lisa?
So I guess because it's just almost 6%, and I'm just thinking that I know our overall increase was a lot less than that, but I know this is specific to the high school. Is that
Yep,
why
it
it's
is
so much
specific to the high
higher?
school.
Because the high school is higher than...
Well, remember when we
Increased staffing.
increased staffing, we said once we got to a certain level, it was going to be necessary to increase staffing, and this was the year. Once we get over the 125, we
Right.
need to increase staffing, and that's what you're seeing there.
We had a faculty position, we had an ELO position, we
Right.
had a nurse position. Yeah.
So I guess I would want to probably have a motion
So
to
Michael's
approve
agreed
that.
to do that assignment while he was out.
So could I have a motion to approve the Barrington tuition rates for 2018-19?
So
Al? Moved by Al, second by Dan.
Second.
Other questions for Sue? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank
6
you.
in favor, the tuition rates are
Thanks.
approved. We have Michael's statement, which he sent us by email, and it's also in the packet. Seems very informative to me. I had a question, like where would this go?
So my intent with this was to have something that could go anywhere, really.
Okay.
So whenever the opportunity arose and there was some discussion or interest in what's going on here, that this could be posted or duplicated or whatever in that location. So probably most likely what we're talking about is either it's probably mostly some of the community Facebook groups. There are several of them that discuss school issues from time to time, and I've been surprised when I see in there very active members of our school community who have no idea how to find school board information. So, and the parts that are underlined in the electronic version are links to the appropriate, the closest place to that information on the district website, because it's all there. It's all accessible, and it's all, if you know where to look, it's there.
So would this have a home on the district website at all, or is this?
It certainly could, and then
Okay.
and then if I saw
Could be in handbooks, could be on the agenda.
Sure,
We could just use it as kind of a blanket statement as we produce documents. We could put it at the bottom of, any communication we
Can
send
I
out.
make a suggestion?
Of course.
That you put this when you register for school. Because when parents all have to register for a kid for school. Therefore, if this is there, you can assure that every parent who's registering for school will get
Has seen
this
it.
information.
So it's just kind of like all-purpose, anytime we feel like, we could, want to put in contact information, this could just be kind of...
Right. So I think the most recent was perhaps a month ago or so. There was a lot of discussion about the community events and comments about people who said they might want to speak, or how do I contact either the school board or the administration, and I thought this would be a useful resource for that. And I think registration.
That's a perfect
You get an
place.
annual reminder. I think that's a great place for it. Yeah.
Could I have a motion to approve this statement as a statement about contacting the school board, the school district? Denise?
I'll make a motion to approve this statement as written.
Okay, moved by Denise, seconded by?
I'll second it.
Second by... Further questions for Michael?
No, it's well written. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks for doing it, Michael. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 in favor. This is endorsed, approved.
Ouch.
Okay, so we have policies. I don't know if people want to do these as a block or whether people want to pull out individual policies. What's your pleasure?
That's fine.
Okay, you want to move it?
I'd like to make a motion. I have to make this bigger because I can't see this. I'd like to make a motion to approve policy KCBA, which is memorials, dedications, and recognition, KLG, which is relations with police authorities, CHCA, approval of handbook and directives, EBCA, emergency plans for second read.
Okay, moved by Al. Is there a second? Second by Michael, excuse me. Questions about these? We've gone over these pretty carefully. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 in favor. These are all approved. Could I have a motion to approve the list of activity stipends for the middle school? Al?
So moved.
Moved by Al. Is there a second? Second by Dan. Questions? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 in favor. Those stipends are approved. School board committee updates?
Tom, I just realized I forgot to make a nomination.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, there's something in the back.
That was it, okay.
So
What's your hand?
I'd like to nominate Val Caswell as a school nurse, one-on-one at the Mohammed School, and be glad to answer any questions related
So
to
is this
that.
somebody coming in who needs a one-on-one nurse?
Yes, it's
Okay.
actually the nurse that we had hired in the summertime resigned suddenly, and we needed to replace her as quickly as we possibly could. And Val is the person we selected.
Okay.
So I'll move that we put forward Valerie Caswell to be the one-on-one nurse at Mohammed.
Moved by Kenny, seconded by Denise. Further discussion about this?
Just reading those recommendations and knowing Sue Caswell, I could see why her daughter has those stunning recommendations, and it's really good to see.
So she is currently enrolled in an RN program? Is that?
And she has her bachelor's degree in science, and she's one class short of having her bachelor's degree in nursing. But she has already passed the nursing exam because at the point right now, the state doesn't require a four-year degree, but she's well on her way of completing it.
So in terms of the requirements for this position?
She's A-okay.
Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. 6 in favor. That
Thank you.
Endorse that appointment. Okay, school committee updates. Denise?
The Long Range Planning Committee met on Monday, and the big issue is trying to tweak the formula to be able to better predict kindergarten is what the committee is really trying to work on. And we talked about different ways. It is, again, very difficult because, as I mentioned last time, some school districts can just look at their births 5 years prior and say, okay, there were X number of students born 5 years ago, that's about how many we're going to get in kindergarten. It doesn't work that way in Oyster River because we have so many students who move in. We talked about how to get a better handle on that number, and one of the things I just learned is we have been gathering information at kindergarten registration about number of preschoolers also in the home, so that might be some information that's possibly useful, I don't know, but the committee just is, really just trying to get a better handle on that so that we can have better numbers. The other issue is the split between Mastway and Moharriman, and there's not really a lot. We talked about, is there different information that we can get that might help us be able to better predict that, and so far, unfortunately, we haven't come up with anything other than, again, they use a particular formula it's based historically, so, it's what's happened last 3 years is kind of how it's based. So they look at, what was the split the last 3 years, and they use that information to predict what the split will be next year. Again, it's kindergarten that's really the killer, because after that, you just do grade progression ratios, because then once you know what your enrollment is, and I mean, they always have there's a formula that adds students because of the move-ins, but basically you have your split, but it's at kindergarten that they're really trying to figure out.
How did the committee feel about the bump from kindergarten to first grade, going from last school year to this school year? I think that was something we expected to get smaller with the advent of all-day kindergarten, but it still seems like there's a significant incoming enrollment
For the first grade,
yeah.
right. Well, and we did talk about that. We talked about this being a transition period, and so there were still probably a lot of families out there that maybe had their children in a private school. That's where the older siblings had gone, that kind of thing. So we did talk about how it's probably going to be 3 years, while it's still like this transition sort of in it. So there's probably 1 more year of a transition period. But the first grade numbers are actually fairly solid and fairly accurate. It's not really the first grade that's really giving the trouble, as much trouble as tries, now going from half day to full day K and trying to figure out, how many families might move into the district earlier. Maybe they waited to move in, now they're going to move in sooner, just different things like that.
Other committee updates? Kenny?
So we met as policy and began work on the discrimination policy, the bullying policy, and also looking at charges through the food services program. So discussion and trying to do more research on that before we bring those forward.
Others? Public comment? No? Okay. Future meeting dates as indicated here. We have no non-public or non-meeting sessions, so I think we're ready to have a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Al, seconded by somebody. Michael? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. We're adjourned.
Tomorrow.